issues as our political landscape expands. The need to give more space to women became imperative. President Muhammadu Buhari has instructed the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice Abubakar Malami and Minister of Police Women Affairs, that's Pauline Tallen, to come up with possible constitutional and legal changes that will create a level playing field for women in politics and governance. President Buhari, who stated this at the inauguration of APC Women Presidential Campaign Committee in Abuja, advised them to resist the temptation of concentrating their campaigns in the Federal Capital Territory. Jide, we followed this bill up till when Mrs. Aisha Buhari appeared in the National Assembly, and now we talked about the possibility of legislating, on this particular issue, but we didn't see any move from the federal government. Now that President Muhammadu Buhari has given the directive to the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice and the Minister of Women Affairs to actually look at how it can become something that will be embedded and enshrined in our laws.
It's fair enough the president is thinking along this line, but there's nothing that he can do by way of a legal instrument backing this move, except the National Assembly buys into the idea. When the president's wife and other women went before the National Assembly, and the president's wife even bowed before them, we expected some level of reciprocity from the lawmakers. But by the time the issue was tabled before them, they shut it down based on several arguments that, okay, if we say we are to give women extra House of Reps, Senate seats from each state, which constituency will they represent? That was the argument that was used to quash that the efforts of the president's wife and other people. They were arguing which constituency will the women represent, because every lawmaker in the National Assembly, even in the State Assembly, represents a constituency, represents its constituency. But I think the framers of that bill did not bear that in mind. So it's a good thing that the president appears to be warm to the idea of giving women greater representation, not just in the national executive, but even talking about political positions now, including the National Assembly and the state assemblies. I don't know how they intend to do it, but we need to find out countries like Rwanda that have far more women in their parliament than any country in the world currently. How did they do it? How did they agree to have this system in place whereby women are better represented? What can we do? We look at some states in northern Nigeria, for example. No representation of any sort. House of Assembly, you look at a state that has 44 local government, not one woman managed to even represent one constituency. So especially in the far north, the conversation has to continue so that the men folk will see the need to encourage women, give them more opportunities, because even if we say, look, this thing is right, the attitudes of some people have to change. Because if we continue to see politics as a winner takes all affair, a lot of these women don't have the resources that the men have. They don't have the connection that the men have. So when they go to the polls, they will be defeated. It's not as if they don't make efforts, but they get defeated. And in some cases, too, you find that even the women refuse to vote for fellow women. I was saying, when we had the, was it the APC presidential primaries, I was predicting, I said, even the women, I will not vote for one of their own. That has to stop.
When you look at this proposal, and a lot of people will see that, look, this is not too necessary, that it's something that we can evolve with time.
I agree with that. Because when we go back and we start from the 35% affirmative action, have we achieved it? We have not. The other day, the president of the Senate, Ahmad Lawan, said it loudly. He said, when he initially came into the Senate, there were more women than we have now.
Yes.
So something is happening. And we actually don't need, in my own opinion, to legislate anything. Because whatever you legislate, it is what is happening on the field, ultimately. Like BKO said, that will determine that. If we don't make conscious efforts, especially in the North, to correct some of these things, this impression that women must be subjugated. In some homes, that's why you have violence. A man says, I'm talking, you are talking.
Sit down there.
Sit down there. It starts from there. We don't see women in this part of the world as people who have equal rights as men. So basically, we must start from there. In some churches, women can't be pastors. They can't get on the pulpit to preach. But some of them are more, in fact, a lot more women are more spiritual than women.
Yes, yes.
They are the ones holding a lot of homes in terms of prayer in our country, not the men. So
and I
then
think
you now
that
say,
even Obasanjo did well by giving women more opportunities.
Yes, opportunity
And more
to make deliberate efforts.
And they did well.
Critical ministries.
Crucially, they did well. All of those women. You look at Amina Mohammed today, who is the second most powerful
Deputy
civil
Secretary
servant
General.
in the world. Second most powerful civil servant in the world. By the job that she does at the UN. You look at Okonjo-Iweala. These are all products of the Obasanjo era.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
So we have to do our best to improve. In appointive positions, I know you can easily legislate those ones to say a ministerial appointment, this and that, appointive positions. But in the election, for example, is a lot more difficult for our women. I don't know how they can do that.
Joining us via Zoom for more discussion on this is Director of Women Advocacy Research and Documentation Center, WATC, Dr. Abiola Akiode Afolabi. Thank you for joining us, Doc.
Yes, good morning. It's a pleasure being here again, and well done for the good work you do.
Sorry for the late notice. I understand you just get yourself. Thank you for joining us. Now, what we're trying to say is that if there's a kind of legislation to back this women participation in politics, as the president is proposing, will it in any way aid what you've been advocating for?
Well, it's good that the president has woken up to that responsibility, because the canvas for gender equality, it's a developmental canvas. It's not just giving numbers and all of that. It's something that will border on growth and development. Nigeria as a country has committed itself to the SDG 5, the Sustainable Development, the SDG 5 goal, which actually focuses on gender equality. And one would expect that Nigeria would take steps in that regard. I don't think we are very far from it if we are very realistic people. The current constitutional reform process, which is still ongoing, had the opportunity to do that, they were in a very different manner, because for years there has been called for constitutional reform in this country, and never did we have a time when issues of gender become one of the items that the National Assembly would want to legislate upon. But in 2021, it was listed as one of the categories for legislation, and it was called the vulnerable groups, gender and vulnerable groups. So under that, about 5 items were listed for gender equality. And of course, those 5 items came to 4 at the National Assembly, and they were debated upon. And these were items that has to do with affirmative action. One of the bills was speaking to amend Section 48 of the Constitution to increase the number of women in the Parliament, and also Section 49. It proposed 101 seats, and it was arranged in a way that ordinarily shouldn't in any way become problematic, because there's no way we can achieve that affirmative action without legislating on it. In countries where they have made inroad, for example, in Rwanda, where about 63% of parliamentarians today, are women, it's because Rwanda in 1995 had included that in their constitution. If you also go from Rwanda, you go to Uganda, it's the same. In South Africa, where there's also been a lot of increase, and if you look at all those other Scandinavian countries, so legislation, it's a very important potent tools that we can use to leverage gender equality. I heard you speaking about the challenges that women face in political participation and representation. So it will be very difficult if there's no legislation in that regard to provide for that formal representation for women to be able to achieve it. So one of the things that the Nigerian Constitution reform process had raised was the need to provide for 101 seats, and it was arranged in a way that should be convenient for everybody. For instead of 3 senatorial seats, we have 4. One of them will be representing gender constituency, which take care of women, people with disability, and other people. The second one, it's for the House of Rep, and it was asking for 1 more seat, 1 more member, for the House of Rep. And the third was one member for the Senate, for the House of Assembly. So if you look at that, that gives about 111. So meaning that in the Senate, we have like 36 more women, and you can imagine where they have just about 9. If we have 9 plus 36, that's quite a lot. It's not a lot, but at least it's significant. Likewise, if we have more in the House of Assembly, House of Rep. So, but these bills were shut down at the National Assembly, both at the Senate and also at the House of Rep. And the House of Rep recommitted to that bill. So if the president is true to his word in terms of increasing representation, there is still an opening, for the president to lobby the House of Rep to reaffirm some part of the bill. The House of Rep came back particularly on the issue of appointment, because normally you wouldn't expect that there will be a problem in saying that there should be 10% or 20% in appointment, which is an executive role, which ordinarily an executive governor or an executive president can do by itself. Yes. You talked about President Jonathan, who had done that at this point. Obasanjo also did that. So one would have expected that, the president will move beyond just rhetorics, to action. And there is still an opening for him to be able to do that with the current constitutional reform process. Okay. As the president of Nigeria.
Abiola, the argument of some of the lawmakers at that time was that a problem will arise as to which constituency a woman, the women will represent. Yeah. How do we find a way around that? If this bill were to be represented, for example, because the Constitution expects that each lawmaker will represent a constituency.
I don't think that was much of the problem. I think at the point we were able to negotiate that, because I was very much involved in this conversation. We were able to negotiate that. And that was why we were saying that the woman represents the gender constituency. So in that regard, it's not a matter of, if you look at what happened in Uganda, it doesn't necessarily need to represent a senatorial district, but it can represent the gender constituency. It won't stop other women to contest for the other. So it doesn't then become the only space for women to contest. So Senator Lujimi can still retain her own position. Then there can be another position for that gender constituency. One, because we know that there should be some delineation that delineation that will help in arranging that. And if you look at what the constitutional provision was talking about, it was not talking about this happening immediate. It was saying that after this election. So it could have been something that would have been, we would have enough opportunity to work out. And it's for 16 years. Meaning that within that 16 years, we'll be able to come back and rearrange it. What I think was the problem was after we negotiated that, the National Assembly member then became a bit uncomfortable with having a super delegate. Because what it then means is that the central representation will be a central representation for Lagos State, as a gender constituency representative. So meaning that to some of them, they think it's going to be more powerful than having the secretarial district. So it was more of that became the issue. I think at the point they agreed to have it, but they were afraid of having a super delegate, because what it means is that if it's not representing a senatorial district, if it's representing a constituency, then it's representing the entire constituency in Lagos State. So I think, and for us, those are the ways that some of these issues have been resolved in other places, like Uganda, like Uganda, for example, like Rwanda. So they have that assigned to represent a particular constituency. And that was what we were proposing as a compromise at that point in time. But by and large, ordinarily, it should have been, if you look at Kenya. So let's step back a bit and go to Kenya, where they were not even representing gender constituency. The Constitution of Kenya allows for two-thirds of members of Senate. So meaning that then it becomes important for the arrangement to be made. If we say, as we speak today, there is a lot of arrangement being made in the political terrain. Muslim, Christian, Muslim, Northern, Southern. So of course, that can also be made for gender. So if, for example, this constituency brings in women, then it can go to the next. So if we are really ready, it is not as if this arrangement can be made. It's been made in Kenya. And as of today, if you look at Kenya election, there was many women who were emerged as possible as governors, which was not the issue before until when that constitutional provision comes in. So it's if we are ready as a giant of Africa, we have enough women. They can name them who can run this position and run it successfully. So if the president is true to his word, he can take a step, and the time is now, because the time is really running out, and the constitutional reform process is ongoing. His wife was at the National Assembly, and we were surprised and embarrassed that despite the lobbying, those bills, 5 of them shot down, particularly in the House of Rep. 5, not even issue of citizenship, not even issue of the indigenship. So how does that affect, how does that affect gender equality issue? That a woman has a right to be able to claim a state of origin where she moves to. If she gets married and she becomes an origin of your state that she can claim. So why should that be a problem? So it shows the attitude of the National Assembly members, or those who are representing us, on how they see women issues. And that was why we went to the National Assembly. And for goodness sake, we were there for 1 month. At the end of the 1 month, they came to negotiate and said they are going to step down. Honorable Bajabiamila, the Speaker of the House, went down to step down 3 of those bills. And up to today, they have not gone back to vote for it. So it shows how, so if the president wants to support women, he should do that. And please, let me also mention, while doing that, we had a plan B. And the plan B was to go to court to say now that the Nigerian government has signed the National Gender Policy. I was one of the plaintiffs, was one of the plaintiffs, signed the National Gender Policy. And because we have signed, they should ensure that there is 35% of affirmative action in appointment position. And we won in court. Then the government was going to roll out the names of the members of INEC, the commissioners in INEC. And we realized that women were not there. And we wrote a letter. And the next thing, the government went to court to go and challenge that decision. So I see a double speak here. Because it's the same Attorney General that went to court to challenge the appointment position, and the same precedent that we sued. So please, we don't want to be we don't want to be used to get political votes. So issues of women are much more important, and the country and the president should please take it as a matter of urgency and deal with it. He has every opportunity. Step down the case in court and allow for appointed position. At least that's a step forward, and that will be a legacy that the president can give to us. Maybe the president is not even aware. So the Attorney General should step down that case challenging women's appointments that we have won in court.
But don't you think that this is more of an issue of persuasion than legislation? For instance, this morning I still read a story where the permanent secretary in the State Ministry of Women Affairs was a man. And I was wondering, what is happening? Can't we...
As basic as
yes, I've
that
seen
is.
that, I've seen that even in one of the Northeast
Can you
states
imagine?
where women affairs
ministry. How can the man now
headed by a man.
The man, even as commissioner, you find it in some
Don't you
states
think there are some cultural problems that need to be
that we
addressed?
need to address.
Well, I think it's an issue, but also it's not an issue. There are a lot of if or she. So if you, because for us, it's not the coinage that matters. It's the substance. It's not the formality of it, but it's the commitment and the political will towards it. There are a lot of men who are feminists who believe in women's affair and all of that. So one would not say it's entirely wrong to have men, standing for women, But there are spaces for women that you would expect to see women, engaging, But we haven't gotten to that level as a country where a man stands in a woman's position, I think, for example, the permanent secretary, I think it's a position that it's a formal position. So when you get to that level, they choose the highest person, so it can be, at any space, But we have also seen in this country where we have someone contesting for woman leader who is a man. So those are spaces that you would not expect that, men should contest for. But by and large, I think what's important is that we need to be deliberate and intentional, in ensuring that we have more women in politics. Look at all the political parties. Look at the candidates that they are bringing to be up. Look at the the election committees that they are bringing up. You rarely find women there. Whereas in Lagos, we saw the number of men who were on the street. So I think also it's an internal and external thing. Women within the political party must also do more in terms of affirming that right, so that we are not often used for political chess, so that we also affirm our right from within the political parties. And I'm sure a lot of non-profit organizations are working on that. And externally also, it's also important for women to vote women. And this is not only about Nigeria. I know you are mentioning the fact that some women don't vote women, but I know that there are also men who don't vote some men too. So I think it's also about the political theory. So we can't just blame them by bringing them, out of the society and expecting them to act differently. So it is for us to make sure that we also have women who can really deliver, because women cannot run Nigeria the way the men are running it. Women cannot, So any woman who is coming to position must also know that they must be substantive leader. They must be leaders that are transformative. So it's a measure of quality and quantity, that we are canvassing for. And that's where we want to see the kind of transformative change that we are talking about. But we keep working on it. But for the president, this is a time. We will follow up with his promise. We will write to him, we'll write to the Attorney General to say it is time to take that action. Withdraw the case at the National Assembly. The president can have more appointments for women. And we are also working to ensure that the current presidential candidates will start from now. So there's a conference coming up on the 25th where we're inviting all the presidential candidates to make a vow to commit to women, which is being organized by Radio Nigeria. So we're all going to be there, demanding, because we have realized that it's not a child's play anymore. We can't continue to remain in a country where our dignity is not an issue, where our integrity is not an issue, where our representation, voice, and influence is being compromised on a daily basis. We will continue to ask for gender equality, because that is what can make Nigeria a better country. So it is one of the things that we need to do, and we are committed to doing that.
I want to thank you, Dr. Abiola Akiode Afolabi, Director of Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center. Thank you for spending your time.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for bringing me.
Dr. Akiode, a Luta woman. She's been a student activist since her days in the University of Ife, and always at the vanguard of women emancipation. Look, in my church now, women are not allowed to mount the pulpit to give sermon. They can do every other thing. like
In my
cultural
church, they are
traditional
allowed.
thing.
In my church, they are allowed. And my wife,
Don't
my
allow
wife
it as
preaches
a matter
many
of
times.
maybe doctrine.
So those are doctrinal issues. But some churches allow them to get to the very top. There is very little difference between a man and a woman. It's the same brain that God gave us. It's the same brain. There's no brain meant for the woman. It's just the same brain. And physiologically too, we are very similar. So this equality thing, women shouldn't even be begging for it. When you look at the record of the women, those of them who have been given the opportunity to serve, they've done well. They've done well. I agree with her that women won't run Nigeria the way the men are running it.
Exactly.
I agree absolutely with her, and I have no shame in saying that.
far more
That I don't
compassionate.
believe that women will run Nigeria as badly as the men are running our country. They are far more compassionate, far more merciful than to run our country in this manner. And we've seen Obasanjo gave women a chance. Who was that woman that Obasanjo gave a chance that didn't excel? One stood up to the House of Reps the other day, Aruma Ote. Every time I look at that video, I say, "Kai, this woman."
Correct.
No, that's the way we should fight corruption. Stand up to somebody bent on looting our patrimony. And that was what that woman did. She was not scared.
Okay.
She did, yes, Aruma Ote.
I vote
She was
for-
punished
that's-
for it, but it doesn't matter. She was punished because they used their power, but at least she's happy that she satisfied her conscience.
All right.